Christmas morning, cinnamon rolls burning in the oven, divorce papers on the counter, and a 7-month pregnant woman watching her husband post upgrade complete with his new girlfriend. But here is what Vincent Ashford did not know: the homeless Santa ringing a bell outside a shelter. He was watching everything, and he was not just any Santa. He was her billionaire father, the one she thought died before she was born, the one who had been waiting 32 years for exactly this moment. What happens next, you will not believe it. Stay until the end. Trust me. And if this story touches you, hit that subscribe button. Like, comment, share with someone who needs to hear this. Let us begin. The divorce papers landed on the kitchen counter between the cinnamon rolls and her prenatal vitamins. Carolyn Whitmore stared at the manila envelope. 7 months pregnant. Christmas morning. The smell of cinnamon and butter filling their Manhattan penthouse kitchen. Outside, the floor-to-ceiling windows. Snow fell softly over Central Park. Inside, the 12-foot Christmas tree sparkled with lights she had spent 3 days arranging. She had woken up at 5 in the morning to make Vincent's favorite breakfast: cinnamon rolls from scratch. The recipe his grandmother used. The one he said reminded him of childhood, of love, of home. She had arranged his gifts under the tree: the Mont Blanc pen he had admired in a store window, the first edition of his favorite book she had hunted for months to find, the custom cufflinks with their wedding date engraved. She wore the emerald maternity dress he had bought her last month. He always said green was his favorite color on her. Said it made her eyes look like forest pools. Said he could get lost in them forever. Forever lasted 2 years. The timer beeped. The cinnamon rolls. She had been sliding them from the oven when he walked in. Vincent stood by the counter. No Santa hat like last year. No smile like every morning before. Just expensive silk pajamas and that look. The one he got during business calls when he was about to deliver bad news. Cold, calculated, distant, like she was a problem to be solved, not a wife to be loved. What is this? Caroline's voice came out small. She hated how small it sounded. Hated that her first instinct was to shrink, to make herself less threatening, less visible, less exactly what it looks like. Vincent poured himself coffee from the pot she had made. Black, 2 sugars, the way he always took it, the way she had memorized in their first week of dating. I need you to sign these. I want to be out of this marriage by New Year's. The cinnamon roll started to burn. Caroline could smell it, that acrid edge creeping into the sweetness, like her life, like everything she had built. Turning to ash while she stood frozen, Vincent, it is Christmas Day, and time does not stop for sentiment. Carolyn, he did not look at her, kept his eyes on his coffee, on his phone, anywhere but her face. That has always been your problem. Too emotional, too needy, too much. The word hit like a slap. Too much. She had spent their entire marriage trying to be less demanding, less present, less herself. Quit her job at the museum because he said it took too much of her time. Stopped seeing friends because he said they were bad influences. Moved into his penthouse because he said her apartment was beneath them. And still she was too much. She looked at him, really looked at him. This man she had loved for 4 years, married for 2. The father of her unborn daughter. The man who had promised her forever in front of 200 guests. Who had cried during his vows. Who had carried her across the threshold of this penthouse laughing. When had his eyes gotten so cold? When had his jaw set so hard? When had he started looking through her instead of at her? Or had they always been that way? Had she just been too blind, too hopeful, too in love to see? Who is she? Vincent. He set down his coffee mug. Precise, controlled, the way he did everything. Even cruelty was efficient with Vincent Ashford. Does it matter? I am carrying your child. My attorney will discuss child support. Sign the papers. Make this easy. For once in your life. Carolyn, make something easy. He walked toward the door. Not the bedroom. The front door, already dressed under the pajamas. She realized, already packed. The suitcase by the entrance she had not noticed. Too focused on the cinnamon rolls, on making everything perfect. Always trying to make everything perfect. Never succeeding. Caroline's brain struggled to catch up. He was leaving. On Christmas morning, After dropping divorce papers on the counter like junk mail, like grocery lists, like nothing. Where are you going? Out? I will be back later for my things. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. Vacate. Like she was a tenant. Not his wife, not the mother of his child, not the woman who had rebuilt her entire life around him. Vincent, wait, her voice cracked. She hated herself for it. We need to talk about this. We can go to counseling. We can work through whatever this is. Whatever I did wrong, I can fix it. I can be better. I can be less. The words tumbled out. Desperate. Pathetic. She hurt herself and wanted to disappear. There is nothing to work through. He finally looked at her, and she wished he had not, because there was nothing there. No anger, no guilt, no regret. Just emptiness. The marriage was a mistake. The baby was not planned. You have become boring. Caroline, predictable, ordinary. I have found someone more suitable. More suitable. The smoke alarm started shrieking. The cinnamon rolls were burning. Black smoke poured from the oven, filling the kitchen with the smell of destruction. Caroline stood frozen. The alarm screamed and screamed, like her heart, like everything inside her that was dying. Vincent grabbed his keys from the hook she had installed. The hook shaped like a little house, because she had thought they were building a home. Jesus Christ, Caroline. Can you not even make breakfast without creating drama? He shook his head, disgusted. This is why I am leaving. Everything with you is chaos. He left. The door clicked shut. Quiet, final, expensive. Nothing cheap about this penthouse. Nothing cheap about Vincent Ashford, except his heart. That was the cheapest thing she had ever encountered. Carolyn stood alone in the kitchen. His kitchen now. The smoke alarm still shrieking. The cinnamon rolls burning. Her hand moved to her belly where her daughter kicked. 7 months. A girl. They had found out 2 weeks ago. She had cried with joy. He had smiled and said, "That is nice," and gone back to his phone. She should have known then. Should have seen the signs. But she was too busy planning the nursery, picking names, dreaming of the family they would build. Hope. She wanted to name her Hope. How ironic. How pathetic. How perfectly, devastatingly appropriate. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text, not from Vincent's number, from her college roommate, Anna Campbell. They had not spoken in months, not since Vincent said Anna was a bad influence. Too loud, too opinionated, too much. The message was short, just a screenshot and 3 words. I am so sorry. Caroline opened the image, watched it load slowly on her cracked screen, line by line, like watching a car crash in slow motion, like watching her life end frame by frame. A woman, blonde, beautiful, young, very young. Amber Sinclair. Carolyn knew who she was. Everyone knew who she was. Social media influencer, 340,000 followers, 28 years old, daughter of investment banker Harrison Sinclair, not pregnant, not boring, not 7 months along, and swollen and exhausted and trying so hard to be enough. Amber stood in front of Vincent's car, his BMW, the one Caroline had co-signed for, because his credit was bad. Why was his credit bad? He was a millionaire. Millionaires did not have bad credit. She had asked once. He had gotten angry, said she was being paranoid, controlling, too much. So she stopped asking, stopped questioning, stopped thinking. The caption destroyed what was left of her. Starting my next chapter with my true love. Sometimes you have to let go of dead weight to fly. Hashtag upgrade complete. Hashtag new beginnings. Hashtag blessed. Dead weight. He had called her dead weight. On Christmas morning, on Instagram, for 340,000 people to see, for everyone they knew to read. For her humiliation to be complete and public and permanent, Caroline's coffee mug slipped from her hand, shattered on the marble floor, brown liquid spreading, glass everywhere. Just like her life, just like everything she thought she knew, she sank to the floor. Careful, slow, 7 months pregnant, cannot move too fast, cannot breathe too deep, cannot think too hard or she might shatter like the mug. The baby kicked, right under her ribs. Hard, like she was angry too, like she knew, like she was already fighting. Carolyn sat on the kitchen floor, broken glass around her, burnt cinnamon smell in the air. Christmas morning, alone, pregnant, about to be homeless, publicly humiliated, completely destroyed. She started to laugh. It came out wrong. Broken, hysterical. Like the coffee mug, like her marriage, or wrong, like everything she had believed was real. The baby kicked again. Harder. Caroline put both hands on her belly, felt her daughter moving, fighting, living. It is okay, baby. She whispered through tears she did not remember starting. We are okay. We will be okay. I promise. I promise I will figure this out. I promise I will not let you down. She was lying. To herself. To her daughter. She had no idea how to figure anything out. No job. No savings. No friends left. No family except her mother 3 hours away. But what else could she do? What else was there except promises and hope and the desperate belief that somehow this was not the end? The smoke alarm finally stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. Heavy, final, like a door closing, like a life ending, like Christmas morning in a penthouse that was never really hers. Grace Thornton arrived in 18 minutes, still in her nursing scrubs from the night shift at Mount Sinai, hair in a messy bun, no makeup, coffee stain on her sleeve. She had been Caroline's best friend since college, roommates freshman year. Bridesmaids at each other's imaginary future weddings they used to plan at 2 in the morning. The kind of friend who shows up, who never stops showing up, even when Vincent said Grace was too loud, too opinionated, even when Caroline stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped being a friend at all. Grace never stopped. She took one look at Caroline sitting on the kitchen floor surrounded by broken glass and burnt cinnamon, and something in her face went hard, dangerous, that absolute piece of garbage. She helped Caroline up, careful, gentle, led her to the couch away from the glass, got her water, got her tissues, got her a blanket because Caroline was shaking and could not stop. Then Grace held her, did not say anything, did not offer advice or solutions or empty promises, just held her while Caroline cried, really cried, the kind of crying that hurts your chest, that steals your breath, that feels like dying. When the crying finally stopped, when Caroline had nothing left inside her but emptiness, Grace pulled back. Her eyes were wet too, but her jaw was set. Okay, show me the papers. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Caroline had set out Vincent's breakfast. The cinnamon rolls were still in the oven, charcoal now, unsalvageable, like her marriage. Grace read through the divorce papers. Her jaw got tighter with each page. Her knuckles went white, gripping the edges. By the time she finished, she was vibrating with fury. Caroline, these are not divorce papers. These are robbery. What do you mean? Grace spread the pages across the table, pointed to each clause like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Look, you get nothing. The prenup protects all his assets. You have 3 days to vacate. Child support is capped at state minimum, which in New York is barely enough for diapers. No alimony. Even though you left your career, your apartment, your entire life to support his dreams, you are liable for half the penthouse expenses through the lease term, which means you owe him money, and you have to sign an NDA about your marriage. You cannot even talk about what happened. How is this legal? It is not, but he is counting on you being too scared, too pregnant, too broke to fight. He is counting on you signing because you have no other choice. Carolyn looked at the papers. The legal language swam in front of her eyes. Words like whereas and heretofore and irrevocable. Words designed to confuse, to intimidate, to make her feel small and stupid and helpless. She had signed a prenup 2 years ago. Right before the wedding, Vincent said it was standard. Said all couples in their positions sign them. Said his lawyer insisted. Said if she really loved him, she would not make a big deal about it. She had been so in love, so sure they would be together forever, so convinced that signing was just a formality, that they would never need it, that their love was different, special, unbreakable. She had signed without reading it carefully, without getting her own lawyer, without asking questions, because asking questions made her difficult, made her too much. I cannot afford a lawyer, Carolyn said. Her voice was flat, defeated. I have nothing. He made me close my accounts. Combine everything into joint accounts. His name primary on all of them. Grace's eyes flashed. Of course he did. Classic financial abuse. Isolate and control. It was not abuse. He just, he said it was easier. For taxes and Caroline. Grace took her hands, gentle but firm, making her look up, making her see. What he did to you is textbook abuser behavior. Isolate you from friends. Make you financially dependent. Control every aspect of your life. And then discard you when you are too pregnant and too trapped to fight back. Caroline wanted to argue, wanted to defend him. The instinct was so deep, so ingrained, that even now, even after everything, she wanted to make excuses, wanted to find a way it was her fault. But she looked at Grace, her friend, the one who never stopped showing up, and she saw the truth reflected back, the truth she had been hiding from for 2 years. We will figure it out, Grace said. First, we pack. No. Grace blinked. What? No. Caroline stood up, slowly though, carefully. Her legs were shaking, but she locked her knees, refused to fall. I am not packing. I am not crying anymore. I am not running. Then what are you doing? I am finding out who I actually married. She walked toward the hallway, toward the door at the end she had never been allowed to open. Vincent's office, his sanctuary, his domain. She had asked to see it once, early in the marriage. He had gotten so angry, said she was violating his privacy, his trust, said if she could not respect his boundaries, maybe they should reconsider the whole relationship. She never asked again. His office is locked, Grace said, following her down the hall. Then we unlock it. How? He probably has some fancy electronic. Caroline went to the kitchen drawer, the junk drawer every home has, pulled out a slim metal case she had hidden there months ago. Inside were lockpicks, professional grade. Her grandfather had been a locksmith, 40 years in the business. Taught Caroline the basics when she was 12. Said every woman should know how to get into places men tried to keep them out of. Said knowledge was power. Said locks only kept out people who respected them. Caroline had not picked a lock in 15 years, but muscle memory was a powerful thing. The lock clicked open in 30 seconds. Grace stared. What the hell? Caroline, my grandfather. Long story. Vincent's office was immaculate. Leather chairs the color of old money. Mahogany desk polished to a mirror shine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he claimed to own. The walls were covered in awards, plaques, framed magazine covers. Vincent Ashford, tech visionary. Vincent Ashford, entrepreneur of the year. Vincent Ashford, the future of innovation. Carolyn had been in this room twice, both times by accident. Both times Vincent had gotten furious, told her his business required absolute privacy, said she would not understand anyway, said she should stick to what she was good at. She never figured out what that was. She went straight for the filing cabinet, also locked. She picked that one too, faster this time. Her hands, remembering what her mind had forgotten, started pulling files, reading, learning, discovering who she had actually married. Rejection letters, dozens of them, hundreds, from investors, from banks, from venture capital firms, from angel investors, from everyone with money and sense, all dated within the last 18 months. We regret to inform you, after careful consideration, does not align with our investment strategy. Significant concerns about financial projections, unable to verify claimed revenue, credit card statements, 6 different cards, all maxed out, $340,000 in total debt, minimum payments missed, interest accumulating, collection notices starting, loan denials, personal loans, business loans, home equity lines, all denied, all citing insufficient collateral, unverifiable income, concerning credit history, bank statements from accounts she had never seen, the real accounts, not the ones he showed her, almost empty. Transfers out to offshore accounts she did not recognize, payments to people she had never heard of, the successful tech entrepreneur, the millionaire, the visionary, was hemorrhaging money. Grace looked over her shoulder. Read the numbers. Did the math. Caroline, he is not just broke. He is catastrophically in debt. Caroline picked up another file. Lease agreement. For the penthouse. not a mortgage. A lease, month to month. 3 months behind on payments. They did not own this place, had never owned it. The home she had decorated, the nursery she had planned, the life she had built, all rented, all temporary, all a lie. He married me for my credit score. The words came out flat, dead, like the last ember of hope finally going dark. The affair made sense now. Terrible, though, cruel. Logical sense. Amber Sinclair, social media influencer with 340,000 followers. The perfect walking advertisement for a man pretending to be wealthy, young enough to be impressed, naive enough to believe. And her father, Harrison Sinclair. Carolyn remembered now. Investment banking, venture capital boards, 3 different firms. The kind of connections Vincent desperately needed. Vincent was not leaving Caroline for love. He was leaving her for a business opportunity, trading up from the wife who had served her purpose to the girlfriend who could save his crumbling empire. Caroline's hands found a letter, different from the others, personal stationery, heavy cream paper, embossed initials, the kind of paper that cost more than some people's rent. She recognized the handwriting, precise, elegant, cold. Evelyn Ashford, Vincent's mother. Dated 2 weeks ago. Vincent, darling, I warned you about marrying beneath your station. That museum girl was never appropriate for our family. Too common, too emotional, too ordinary. But you insisted she was different, that she would be useful. Now you are trapped with a pregnant nobody who has outlived her usefulness. The optics are dreadful. A pregnant ex-wife will generate sympathy. Sympathy for her means scrutiny for you. Scrutiny we cannot afford right now. But I have found a solution. The Sinclair girl, Amber. Her father Harrison is on the board at Wellington Capital. Also Meridian Ventures. Also the Blackstone Group. He is very interested in your pitch. Very interested in a son-in-law with vision and ambition. But the optics of a pregnant wife are problematic. No one invests in a man who abandons his pregnant wife, unless that wife is already gone before anyone knows to ask questions. Handle it quickly, before she gives birth and complicates everything, before she starts talking to lawyers, before she realizes she has options. I will support whatever you decide. We take care of our own, even when they make mistakes. With love, Mother. Carolyn read it twice, 3 times. The words did not change, did not become less devastating, did not stop being real. His mother knew. His mother approved. His mother orchestrated this. The timing, the Instagram post, the isolation, all of it planned like a business merger, executed like a hostile takeover. I am not even a person to them, Carolyn whispered. I am just a problem to handle, an obstacle to remove, a line item in someone's strategy document. Grace took the letter. Read it. Her face went through several colors before settling on a shade of fury Caroline had never seen. We are keeping this. All of it. Every shred of evidence? Why? What good will it do? They have money, lawyers, connections. I have nothing. You have the truth, and the truth is a weapon. The only question is whether you are willing to use it. Carolyn looked at the files spread across Vincent's desk. 2 years of lies. 2 years of manipulation. 2 years of her life stolen by people who saw her as nothing more than a stepping stone. Her hand moved to her belly. Her daughter kicked. Hard. Angry. She had nothing. No money. No Joe. No home. No friends except Grace. No future she could see. But she had the truth. And she had her daughter. And she had something else too. Something she had buried so deep she forgot it existed. Rage. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. Too tired, too broken, too done. But something made her pick up. Some instinct. Some whisper of fate. Miss Whitmore, this is Richard Sullivan. I represent as someone who has been watching your situation with great interest. Someone who wants to help. Watching my situation. Carolyn's voice was sharp now, harder than it had been in years. That is stalking. Perhaps a pause, a careful breath. But right now you need allies more than you need privacy. My client would like to meet with you today. I know it is Christmas, but he says it is urgent. Who is your client? Your father? Miss Whitmore, your biological father. He would like to meet with you." Carolyn's brain stuttered, stopped, rebooted. "My father is dead. He died in a car accident before I was born." Silence on the other end, long, heavy, full of something she could not name. Then, "No, ma'am. Nicholas Hartwell is very much alive, and he has been looking for you for 32 years. Carolyn sat in her car outside St. Michael's homeless shelter for 23 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles went white. She could not make herself get out. The building was old, red brick darkened by decades of city grime, Christmas lights strung along the roof, crooked, some bulbs burned out, the kind of decorations put up by volunteers who cared more about hope than aesthetics. People streamed in and out through the front doors, families carrying everything they owned in garbage bags, elderly men shuffling against the cold, young women not much older than Caroline clutching babies to their chests, children running and laughing because children do not know yet how cruel the world can be. A man dressed as Santa stood by the entrance. Not department store Santa, not mall Santa, street corner Santa. Worn red suit faded from years of use. Real bell, actual donation bucket. The kind of Santa who stood outside in the cold because someone had to. His beard looked real, white, full. She could see it even from the car. Could see the way it moved when he smiled. When he spoke, when he bent down to talk to a child at eye level. He was ringing the bell, greeting every person who passed, rich or poor, old or young. Everyone got the same smile, the same nod, the same moment of acknowledgement, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. Caroline watched him for a long moment. Something about him seemed familiar. The way he held himself, the tilt of his head when he listened, the gesture he made with his left hand when he talked. She did the same gesture, had done it her whole life. Her mother always said she did not know where Caroline got it from. His eyes were blue. Even from the car, she could see that. Bright, clear, the same shade she saw every morning in the mirror. No, impossible. Her father was dead, had been dead for 32 years. Car accident on a rainy night, before she was born, before he even knew she existed. That was the story. That was the truth. That was who she was. The daughter of a dead man, the child who never knew her father, the girl who grew up with an empty space where half her identity should be. She had made peace with it, built her life around it, defined herself by his absence. And now she got out of the car, 7 months pregnant. Everything hurt. Her back, her feet, her heart. The cold cut through her coat like it was not there. December in New York. The kind of cold that made you question every life choice that led you to this moment. She walked toward the shelter, toward the man in the Santa suit, toward whatever truth was waiting. He saw her when she was still 30 feet away, stopped ringing the bell, set down the bucket, just stood there, watching her approach. His eyes never left her face, never blinked, never looked away, like he had been waiting, like he had been waiting for 32 years. Up close, she saw it, really saw it, could not deny it, could not explain it away. The cheekbones, her cheekbones, the eye color, her eye color, the shape of his jaw, the way his eyebrows drew together when he concentrated, the slight dimple in his left cheek that only appeared when he was trying not to smile, like looking in a mirror showing her 40 years in the future, showing her the face she had wondered about her entire life. Caroline. It was not a question. He knew, had always known, had been waiting on this sidewalk for hours, days, decades. She nodded, could not speak. Her throat had closed completely. Every word she had ever learned had abandoned her. "I am Nicholas, Nicholas Hartwell, your father." He paused, swallowed. His hands were shaking. She realized, this billionaire, this powerful man, trembling like a child. "And before you run, I understand if you want to. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that. But please give me 30 minutes. That is all I ask. 30 minutes to explain. Then you can decide if you ever want to see me again." Caroline looked at him. This stranger, this man who shared her blood, who her mother had erased from existence, who had been alive this whole time while she grew up, believing he was dead. Why today? Why now? After 32 years? Why Christmas Day? Because I knew. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal, like he was afraid any sudden movement would make her bolt. Somehow I knew today would be the day you would need me, the day everything would change. I have been waiting, every Christmas, for years, hoping I was wrong, praying you would never have to learn the truth this way. He looked at her belly, her 7-month pregnant belly, straining against her winter coat. But here you are, and here I am, and I think maybe this is how it was supposed to happen. He led her inside, through the main hall where volunteers served Christmas dinner, turkey and mashed potatoes and green beans and rolls. The smell of food and warmth and community filled the air. Families sat at long tables. Children laughed. Volunteers moved between them with kindness and purpose. For a moment, Caroline forgot about Vincent, about the divorce papers, about the Instagram post, about everything that had happened that morning. For a moment, she just stood there watching strangers take care of each other. This is what Christmas is supposed to be. She did not realize she had said it out loud until Nicholas responded. Yes, it is. He opened a door marked Director, a small office, neat, simple, 2 chairs, a desk covered in papers and files and photographs of smiling faces. The kind of office that belonged to someone who did real work, important work, work that mattered. He gestured to a chair. Carolyn sat, carefully, 7 months pregnant. Every movement required calculation and effort. Getting down was hard. Getting up would be harder. She was learning to plan ahead for things she used to take for granted. Nicholas removed the Santa beard. Underneath was a face she had seen in magazines, in Forbes articles, in news stories about tech billionaires reshaping the world. Nicholas Hartwell, founder of Hartwell Technologies, net worth $4.2 billion, philanthropist, innovator, visionary. Her father, the expensive watch hidden under red velvet sleeves, the custom-made shoes beneath boot covers, the manicured hands that had never known manual labor. This was no street corner Santa. This was one of the richest men in America playing a role, pretending to be ordinary, hiding in plain sight. Why the costume? Why pretend? I volunteer here, have for 20 years, Thursdays and Christmas. He sat across from her, close but not too close, respectful of her space, her boundaries, her right to reject him completely. Today I asked to work Christmas Day specifically, because I knew, the way a father knows, that today you would need help. How did you know about Vincent, about any of this? Nicholas did not answer directly. Instead, he pulled a folder from his desk drawer, thick, professional, the kind lawyers use for important cases, the kind that changes lives. He slid it across to her. Open it. Caroline did. Her hands moved through pages of investigation reports, financial documents, bank records, text messages, photographs, everything about Vincent Ashford, dissected, analyzed, documented, laid bare, his entire life. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal. Your husband is bankrupt, Nicholas said, has been for 18 months. The penthouse is rented, month to month, 3 months behind. The car is leased, payments overdue. Even his Rolex is counterfeit, a very good counterfeit, but fake nonetheless. How did you get this? I have resources. When you announced your pregnancy on social media 6 months ago, I hired investigators, the best in the world. I wanted to ensure you were safe, happy, cared for. I wanted to believe that even though I failed you, someone else would not. What I found instead was a predator, a con artist who targeted you specifically, targeted me. Nicholas leaned forward, his eyes intense, urgent. You had a stable career, good credit, a mother with a successful small business. You were exactly what Vincent Ashford needed, a woman who could co-sign loans, open joint credit cards, provide legitimacy while he played millionaire entrepreneur. The words confirmed everything Caroline had discovered in Vincent's office, but hearing them from someone else, from her father, made them real in a way they had not been before. He married me for my credit score. He married you because you were useful. The pregnancy was an accident, one that complicated his plans. So he found a better option. Amber Sinclair, the influencer whose father sits on 3 major investment boards. Vincent needs capital. Amber provides access. You became expendable. Caroline closed the folder, could not look anymore. Could not see any more proof of how stupid she had been, how blind, how desperate for love that she ignored every red flag. Why are you telling me this? Because you are about to fight him. And you need to know what you are really fighting. You are not fighting a millionaire. You are fighting a desperate con artist who will do anything to maintain his facade. Those are the most dangerous kind. Cornered animals. Nothing left to lose. His mother, Evelyn. She threatened to destroy my mother's business. Nicholas's expression hardened. Evelyn Ashford. Old money, new debts. Her family has been bleeding capital for a decade. She needs Vincent to marry well, to marry rich. Your mother's business is small enough to hurt, large enough to matter. Classic pressure tactic. Can she really do it? She can try. She has connections. Influence. The ability to make phone calls that destroy careers. He paused. But your mother has allies too. Allies she does not know about yet. Caroline studied this man, her father, a stranger who somehow knew everything about her life, who had been watching, protecting. From a distance she never knew existed. Why did you not come find me before? 32 years. You could have found me anytime. You have resources, investigators, all the money in the world. Why now? Why not when I was 5 or 15 or 25? Nicholas's face crumpled. For just a moment, the billionaire disappeared. The powerful man, the visionary. What remained was an old man carrying decades of regret, decades of choices he could not unmake. Because your mother was right to make me stay away. He stood, walked to the window. Outside, Caroline could see families entering the shelter, volunteers serving food, children playing, life continuing while hers fell apart. I met your mother when I was 22, Nicholas said quietly. Margaret was 26. She was putting herself through culinary school, working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, barely eating, but determined. So determined, I was doing tech support during the day, coding at night, living on ramen and dreams. I had this idea for a startup, cloud computing infrastructure, revolutionary at the time. Everyone said it was impossible. Everyone except me. We met at a coffee shop. She ordered something complicated. I made a joke about it. She laughed. That laugh, I can still hear it. I was gone. From that moment, completely, irrevocably, gone. He turned from the window. We dated for 8 months. It was intense, young, the kind of love you feel at 22 when everything seems possible and nothing seems permanent. Then she got pregnant. With me, with you. Nicholas sat back down, closer this time, like he needed her to see his face, to see the truth in his eyes. I panicked. I was 22 years old, broke, living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates who were also broke. I had nothing to offer a child, nothing to offer your mother except dreams and promises. But the startup, investors were circling, real investors, the kind who could make my dreams reality. But they wanted full commitment, no distractions, no complications, no pregnant girlfriend who might pull my focus. I was a distraction. You were a responsibility I was not ready for. I told Margaret I needed to make something of myself first, become worthy, successful, rich. Then I would come back. We would be a family. I would be a father you could be proud of. And she let you go. She told me to leave, said if I could not commit now, during the hard part, during the scary part, during the part where everything was uncertain and difficult, then I had no business being a father during the easy parts either. She was right. She was right. Nicholas's eyes were wet now, tears he did not bother to hide. I left, moved to Silicon Valley, threw myself into the startup. I told myself I was doing it for you, for Margaret, building something so I could come back worthy, deserving. But you did not come back. Not for 3 years. By then, Hartwell Tech had gone public. I was worth $500 million. I thought, finally, though, I am enough. Time to claim my family. I flew back to New York, went to Margaret's apartment. She had moved. I hired investigators. Took 2 weeks to find her. Carolyn knew what was coming, could see it in the slump of his shoulders, the weight of 3 decades of regret. When I finally found her, you were 3 years old. I stood outside a playground for an hour, watched you and Margaret. You were on the swings, laughing. She pushed you higher and higher. You were wearing a purple jacket. Purple was always my favorite color. I know, even then, 3 years old. Already yourself. I wanted to approach, wanted to introduce myself. But Margaret saw me first. Her face, I will never forget it. Not angry, not sad, just tired. The kind of tired that goes bone deep. She met me at a coffee shop, different one from where we first met. Sat across from me with 3 years of single motherhood in her eyes. She told me you thought I was dead. Car accident on a rainy night, before you were born. Why would she do that? Because I failed her. When you were 6 months old, she called me, said she needed help. You were colicky, screaming for hours every night. She was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, barely surviving. She needed me, and you did not come. I was closing Series B funding, $80 million, make or break moment for the company. I told her I would come next month. When things calmed down, next month became 6 months. She stopped calling. When I finally showed up, you were 3, and to you, I was dead. What did she say? She said I had made my choice. Money over family, success over love, and she would not let me hurt you by drifting in and out of your life when it was convenient. Either I committed fully, right then, gave up everything, moved back, became a real father, or I stayed dead. I had 24 hours to decide. And you chose to stay dead. I chose the company. Told myself I would make it worth it. Build an empire. Create something so successful that one day you would understand. Forgive me, I would make so much money that I could fix everything. Did it work? I made billions. Hartwell Technologies changed the world. I am worth $4.2 billion. Forbes top 50, houses in 6 countries, private jets, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Nicholas looked at her, his daughter, the child he had abandoned, the woman she had become without him. And none of it matters, because I lost you. Carolyn sat with him, let it settle into her bones. 32 years of lies, of absence, of wondering why she was not enough to make her father stay. And here was the answer. She was not the problem. She was never the problem. He was, you did not lose me. You gave me up. There is a difference. Yes, I did. The admission hung in the air. No excuse, no justification, no attempt to rewrite history. Just truth. Raw, ugly, real. Caroline thought about Vincent, his lies, his manipulations, his endless excuses for everything he did wrong. And here was her father, a man who had abandoned her before she was born, not making excuses, not rewriting the story to make himself the hero, just admitting what he did, taking responsibility, accepting the consequences. It was more than Vincent had ever given her, more than she had dared to expect from anyone. Why did Mom let you send money for my education? Because she is a better person than I deserve. She put you first, always. The money was not for me, it was for you. College fund, student loans paid off, down payment assistance. She told you it came from your grandparents. Grandma and Grandpa Whitmore died when I was 12, I know, but the money kept coming. Your mother never told you. She wanted you to have opportunities, even if they came from me. Carolyn pressed her thumbnail into her palm, hard. The pain helped, focused her, kept her from flying apart. Nicholas noticed, your mother does that too. That exact gesture. I have not seen it in 32 years, but I recognized it immediately. Caroline stopped, looked at her hand, the small crescent marks where her nail had dug in, a habit she thought was hers alone. Genetic, inherited, passed down from a father she never knew. You are telling me all this now. Why? What do you want from me? Because 2 months ago I found out about Vincent, about his bankruptcy, his plan to divorce you, and I realized you were about to face the hardest moment of your life, just like your mother did 32 years ago. Alone, pregnant, betrayed. And I could not let that happen. Not again. Not to you. Not to my granddaughter. So you have been watching. waiting for him to destroy me so you could swoop in and save the day. I have been preparing to support you when you needed it. I knew he would show his true colors eventually. Men like Vincent are predictable. I should know. Why? Because I was him. 32 years ago. A man who chose ambition over love, success over family, the future over the present. The only difference is I never stopped regretting it. Caroline looked at this man, this stranger, this father. She had nothing. No money, no job, no home, no future she could see. And here he was, offering everything, resources, support, redemption. It would be so easy to take it, to let him fix everything, to be rescued. But she had been rescued by Vincent, swept off her feet, carried away to a better life. And look how that turned out. What if I do not want your help? What if I want nothing to do with you? Then I will still protect you from a distance, like I have done your whole life. You will never see me again if that is what you want. But you and your daughter will never want for anything. That is my promise. 32 years too late, but it is the only promise I can make. And if I do want your help, then I will give you everything I have, but not to rescue you. Carolyn, not to save you. You do not need saving. You need resources, tools, support. I will fund the fight, but you will lead it. You will make the decisions. You will win or lose on your own terms. That is the only way it means anything. Carolyn studied him, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. All she found was a man carrying 32 years of regret, a man who had made the worst mistake of his life and spent every day since trying to atone. She could not trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she could use him. And right now, that would have to be enough. 3 days after Christmas, Caroline sat in the conference room at Sullivan and Associates, 20th floor of a building that screamed money and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, original artwork on the walls, the kind of place that charged more per hour than Caroline used to make in a week. Richard Sullivan was everything his phone voice promised. 52 years old, silver hair, commanding presence, the kind of lawyer who won cases before they started because opposing counsel saw him and knew they were outmatched. Across from him sat a younger man, late 30s, same blue eyes as Nicholas, same blue eyes as Caroline, Richard Hartwell, Nicholas's son, Caroline's half-brother, senior partner specializing in divorce and family law, one of the best in the city. She had a brother, had always been an only child, had grown up lonely, wishing for siblings. And here one was, a stranger who shared her blood, who had known about their father his whole life while she thought hers was dead. The prenup is garbage, Richard said, flipping through documents with practiced efficiency. Vincent misrepresented his financial status. Materially, significantly. You had no independent counsel review the agreement. You were pressured into signing under emotional duress. Any competent judge will throw it out. His mother said they control every judge in the city. Richard smiled, the kind of smile that made opposing counsel nervous. Evelyn Ashford has made donations to 3 law firms whose partners eventually became judges. That is it. That is the extent of her influence. Our father has buildings named after him at 6 universities where current sitting judges graduated. He is on hospital boards where judges' spouses work. He has endowed scholarships for judges' children. He has been building connections for 40 years while Evelyn was buying Chanel. We will get a fair hearing. What about Vincent's countersuit? Richard's smile faded. That is more complicated. Vincent's new attorney had been busy over the holiday weekend, filed papers claiming Caroline had committed fraud, that she had hidden her wealthy father's existence, that she had married Vincent knowing she had Billionaire backing the whole time. The suit also claimed she was an unfit mother, mentally unstable. The building staff had given statements. The pregnant woman who screamed and cried on Christmas morning. Who burned the kitchen? Who sat on the floor surrounded by broken glass? The mysterious man in the parking garage. Nicholas, checking on her, photographed by security cameras. It looked like conspiracy, like a setup, like a wealthy woman playing poor to trap a man. They are not trying to win. Richard explained. They are trying to bury you, make this so expensive, so complicated, so exhausting, that you give up, sign their papers, take pennies, disappear. Can they? If you were alone, yes. Absolutely. You would be bankrupt before the first hearing. But you are not alone anymore. The phone on the conference table buzzed. Richard's assistant, Mr. Hartwell. There is a Mrs. Ashford in the lobby. She is insisting on seeing Miss Whitmore. She says it is urgent. Caroline's blood went cold. Richard looked at her. Calm, professional. Your call. We can have security remove her. No. Caroline surprised herself. Let her in. Are you sure? I want to see her face. I want to understand what I am fighting. Evelyn Ashford swept into the conference room like she owned the building. Cream cashmere coat that cost more than Caroline's car. Pearls that could pay for a year of rent. Perfect hair that had probably never known a day of humidity. She surveyed the expensive office, the attorneys in their expensive suits, the evidence spread across the expensive table. Caroline, dear, this is unexpected. Mrs. Ashford. Richard stood, professional, polite, cold. This is a private meeting with my client. I am aware. I came to speak with Caroline directly. Woman to woman, mother to mother. She let her eyes drift to Caroline's belly. Soon, she turned to Caroline. That smile, the one that never reached her eyes, the one that promised pain wrapped in pleasantries. I see you have found some resources, your father's money. Impressive connection. Though I wonder, how exactly does a museum curator connect with a tech billionaire? Unless, of course, you knew all along. I did not know. The court may see it differently. A pregnant woman, desperate, suddenly discovering a wealthy father, right when she needs legal help. The timing is convenient. Carolyn felt the trap closing, the same trap that had been closing around her since Christmas morning. But I am not here to threaten. Evelyn sat down, uninvited, crossing her ankles like a finishing school graduate. I am here to help. Help. Yes, this has all gotten out of hand. Vincent acted poorly. I admit that. The timing was unfortunate. The Instagram post was ill-advised. But surely we can find a solution. Without courts, without publicity, without unpleasantness. What kind of solution? You sign the original papers. Accept the terms. Walk away quietly. No fuss, no drama, no stories to the press. In exchange, I will ensure your mother's business flourishes, new contracts, new opportunities. I have connections in the catering world. One phone call, and Margaret Whitmore could have more business than she can handle. And if I refuse, then things become difficult. For everyone, the threat was there, hidden under pleasantries, wrapped in kindness, but unmistakable. Think about it. Caroline, Evelyn Rose, smoothed her coat. You have a daughter to think about now. What kind of life do you want for her? Fighting in courts for years, dragging your name through the mud? Or peaceful, comfortable, secure? She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Richard looked at Caroline. She is scared. What? She came here herself. Instead of sending lawyers, that means she is worried. Worried about what we might find, what we might prove, what you might do. But she threatened my mother. Empty threats. Caroline's phone buzzed. Her mother's number. Baby, something is happening. Margaret's voice was tight, controlled. The voice she used when she was trying not to panic. The Greenwich Country Club just canceled my contract. My biggest client, and 3 others called too. All canceling. All giving the same excuse. Going in a different direction. There is more. The health department is here. Right now, saying there was a complaint. Anonymous. They want to inspect everything. Caroline's hand went tight on the phone. Mom, do not say anything. Do not let them in without a warrant. I am sending help. She hung up, looked at Richard. Not so empty after all. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in destruction. Evelyn Ashford did not make grand gestures, did not threaten publicly, did not leave fingerprints. She simply made phone calls, quiet conversations, casual suggestions, and Carolyn's world crumbled piece by piece. Margaret's catering business lost 7 more clients, all of them connected to Ashford family circles, all of them apologetic, all of them using the same phrase, going in a different direction. The health inspector found 3 violations. Minor things: a refrigerator running 2 degrees too warm, a label slightly smudged, a drain cover that needed replacing. Easily fixed. But the inspection was public record. The violations were public record. Suddenly, Margaret Whitmore was the caterer with health code problems, the one you could not quite trust, the one your friends warned you about. Caroline's former colleagues at the museum stopped returning calls. Her boss suggested she take extended leave. Given the circumstances, the stress, the pregnancy, it is not personal, he said. The board is concerned about liability. And frankly, the publicity. Even Grace got a warning. Her ex-husband's attorney called. Casual. Friendly. Just wanted to mention that the custody case was still pending, that any involvement in messy legal proceedings could affect the outcome, that judges did not like complications. You should probably keep your distance. The attorney suggested, for everyone's sake. Grace told him exactly where he could put his suggestions, but her face was pale when she told Caroline. Her hands were shaking. Caroline sat in her tiny studio apartment, 400 square feet, no view, secondhand furniture that smelled like someone else's life, 8 months pregnant, no job, no support system, no one left to turn to. Vincent had done this. Vincent and his mother turned everyone Caroline knew into a weapon, made helping her dangerous, made loving her a liability. She called Nicholas. First time she had initiated contact. First time she had reached out instead of waiting. They are destroying everything. Her voice came out flat, defeated. I know. His voice was calm, too calm. They are following Evelyn's playbook. Isolate, intimidate, eliminate. She has done it before, to other women who threatened her family. This is not new. What do? You fight back. How? I have nothing. No evidence they do not already know about. No allies they have not scared away. No way to win. You have yourself. Caroline, you have your mind, your determination, your anger. And you have something else. Something Evelyn does not know about. What? Other victims. Men like Vincent do not start with marriage. They practice. Smaller cons. Earlier relationships. Other women he destroyed before he found you. Find them. Find their stories. Build a pattern. How do I find them? You are smart. Smarter than you give yourself credit for. The internet, public records, business filings. Vincent had a company before this one. Different name, different city, same pattern. Find the women he destroyed. Find their evidence. And suddenly you are not one woman against the Ashfords. You are a movement. Caroline hung up, sat in the dark, 8 months pregnant, alone, terrified. But under the terror, something else, rage. She had buried it for years, swallowed it, hidden it, made herself small and quiet and acceptable. No more. She opened her laptop, started searching. It took Caroline 3 days to find her. 3 days of internet searches, public records, business filings, court documents, social media archives, late nights staring at screens until her eyes burned. Diane Crawford, 38 years old, former marketing executive turned bookstore owner, living in Vermont now, as far from her old life as she could get. 8 years ago, Diane had been engaged to Vincent Ashford, back when he had a different company, different city, different story, same pattern. Caroline found the engagement announcement buried in old social media posts, found the company dissolution in business filings, found hints of fraud allegations in court records, sealed, but referenced. She called the bookstore, hands shaking, not sure what she would say, not sure Diane would even talk to her. A woman answered, warm voice, cautious. This is going to sound crazy, Caroline said, but I think we have someone in common. Silence on the other end, long, heavy, full of old pain. Then, Vincent Ashford. Yes. More silence. Caroline could hear breathing, could hear the weight of memories. I have been waiting 8 years for this call, Diane finally said. Come to Vermont. I will tell you everything. Caroline drove up the next day. Grace insisted on coming, insisted on being there, even with her custody case hanging over her, even with the risks. That is what friends do, Zuntum. Grace said, real friends. The ones who show up when it costs them something. Diane's bookstore was small, cozy, books stacked floor to ceiling, a cat sleeping in the window, the kind of place that smelled like stories and coffee and second chances. Diane herself was beautiful. Dark hair with streaks of gray she did not bother to hide, sharp eyes that had seen too much, a scar on her left wrist, almost invisible, faded by time. But there, Carolyn saw it. Diane saw her see it. He did that, Diane said quietly, not directly. But when I finally realized what he was, when I tried to leave, when everything fell apart, I did not handle it well. She poured tea, 3 cups, set out cookies she had baked that morning. I met Vincent when I was 30. He was 28, brilliant, charming, full of dreams he made you want to believe in. He talked about changing the world, about building something that mattered, about a future so bright it hurt to look at. I believed him, believed every word. Caroline wrapped her hands around the warm cup, let the heat seep into her bones. Sound familiar? Too familiar. He needed investors. I had savings, good job, connections in the industry. I introduced him to people, co-signed loans, put my credit on the line. I thought I was investing in our future, our life together. When did you know? 18 months in. I found the other accounts, the other credit cards, the other women he was seeing behind my back, the money that was disappearing. But by then, I was in too deep, financially, emotionally. I thought if I just loved him enough, supported him enough, believed in him enough, he would change. He did not. He found someone else, someone richer, better connected, more useful. What did he call me? Caroline's throat tightened. She already knew. Dead weight. Diane nodded. Dead weight. Yes, that exact phrase, like I was cargo, like I was something to be dumped overboard when the ship got heavy. He used that phrase with me, too. On Instagram. Christmas morning. In front of 300,000 people. Diane's hand found Caroline's across the table. Warm. Understanding. Alive. Oh, I am so sorry, but I should have warned you. Warned someone. Gone public. Done something. But I was broken. It took me 5 years to rebuild, to stop feeling worthless, to stop believing his lies about who I was, to stop thinking maybe it was my fault. Maybe I was too much. Not enough. Too something. Do you have evidence? From back then, Diane stood, walked to an old filing cabinet in the corner, pulled out a thick folder stuffed with papers. I kept everything. Emails, financial records, text messages, photographs. I told myself it was for closure, for proof that it really happened, that I was not crazy. But really, deep down, I kept it because I knew. Someday, someone else would need it. Someday another woman would show up, looking for answers, looking for evidence, looking for hope. She handed the folder to Caroline. Take it, use it, destroy him. There are others, are there not? Diane nodded. At least 2 that I know of. A woman in Boston, one in Chicago. Same pattern, same lies, same destruction, same phrase at the end. Dead weight. I need to find them. I can help. We can build a case together. Show the court this is not one woman scorned. This is a pattern, a system, a predator who targets women systematically. Caroline looked at this woman, this stranger, this sister in suffering. Why help me? You do not know me because I remember what it feels like to be alone, to think you are the only one, to think maybe you deserved it, to think maybe you were crazy, to think maybe if you had been better, different, less. No one deserves what Vincent does, and no one should fight him alone. Carolyn drove back to the city with a folder full of evidence and a contact list of other survivors. For the first time since Christmas, she was not alone. New Year's Eve, Greenwich Country Club. The Ashford family was hosting their annual gala. 300 guests, every society page covering the event. Vincent and Amber's engagement was the centerpiece. Caroline had a plan. Grace's ex-husband had remarried. His new wife was a club member. One phone call, one favor, one risk. That is what sisters do, Grace said. Even when it hurts. Caroline arrived as a server. Her mother's catering company still had one contract at the club. The last one Evelyn had not managed to cancel. Small, appetizers only, but enough to get inside. 8 months pregnant in a server's uniform. White shirt straining across her belly, black pants that barely fit. Carrying trays of champagne she could not drink. Invisible. The way rich people always made service workers invisible. Looking through her like she was furniture. Like she was not even human. She moved through the party, listening, recording on her phone tucked in her apron, gathering evidence the old-fashioned way. Vincent was drunk, celebrating, bragging to Harrison Sinclair about his clean break from the dead weight situation, about how easy it was to dispose of inconvenient wives, about the money he would make once Harrison invested. She was getting boring anyway. Vincent laughed, swirling expensive whiskey, asking questions, wanting to know about my business. Who needs that? Amber just smiles and believes whatever I tell her. Harrison laughed too, the laugh of men who see women as accessories. Evelyn was holding court across the room, surrounded by women in designer gowns, describing how she had handled the health inspector situation, the phone calls to clients, the systematic destruction of a small business. These things require management. Evelyn said, delicately, one cannot allow common people to threaten one's family. A few phone calls, a few favors called in. The problem solves itself. Caroline recorded everything. Her hands steady, her face blank. Professional server. Nothing to see here. And then, Evelyn saw her. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Caroline in her server uniform. Pregnant belly obvious. Phone in hand. Evelyn's face went white, then red, then cold. A mask sliding into place. She did not make a scene. Too sophisticated for that. Too controlled. She simply raised a finger. Beckoned security. Two men in black suits. Professional. Discreet. Caroline tried to leave, but 8 months pregnant. Everything hurt. Everything was slow. Her body betraying her when she needed it most. They caught her at the service entrance. Miss, you need to come with us. They took her phone, deleted everything they were saying had find, escorted her through the kitchen, past the other servers pretending not to see, past the cooks keeping their heads down, through the back door, into the snow. Vincent appeared at the entrance, watching, his face showing not guilt, not shame, not anything human, satisfaction. That is how you handle dead weight. He called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Take notes, gentlemen. Whoa. Quick, clean, efficient. The door closed. Caroline stood in the parking lot, snow falling, 8 months pregnant, humiliated. Again. Evidence destroyed. Again. Plan ruined. Again. She found a payphone at a gas station 3 blocks away, hands shaking so badly she could barely dial. I failed. She told Nicholas. They caught me. They took everything. Silence, then. Did they take everything? Caroline closed her eyes. Remembered. The cloud backup. Automatic uploads. She had set it up months ago. Force of habit from her museum days. Always backup. Always have a copy somewhere else. The recordings were still there. Every word, every confession, every piece of evidence. Then you did not fail. Nicholas said, you just have not won yet. The call came the next morning. Unknown number. Miss Whitmore. This is Amber Sinclair. We need to talk. Carolyn almost hung up, almost laughed, almost screamed. Why would I talk to you, Bashaham? Because I saw what happened last night. And because I think I have been very stupid. They met at a diner. Neutral territory. Fluorescent lights and sticky menus. The kind of place where no one looked twice at a pregnant woman and an influencer having coffee. Grace came as backup. Ready to fight, ready to protect. But Amber was not there to fight. She looked different without the Instagram filters. Younger, tired, human. Vincent told me you were crazy, abusive, that you trapped him with a pregnancy, that you were threatening him, stalking him, making his life impossible. I believed him. I am an idiot. What changed? Last night, after they threw you out, after security escorted you into the snow, he laughed. He said, that is how you handle dead weight. And something about the way he said it, the satisfaction, the the cruelty. I realized I had heard that phrase before. He said it about his ex-girlfriend, the one before you, the one who had problems, who was unstable, who deserved what she got. Those were his words, deserved what she got. How many of us are there? I do not know, but I think I was next. Once my father's investment came through, once he did not need me anymore, once I became inconvenient, Amber pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. I have been gathering evidence since I started having doubts, screenshots of texts, financial documents, recordings of conversations. I did not know what to do with them. I was scared, confused, hoping I was wrong. But I was not wrong. Was I? No, you were not. Caroline opened the folder. Read through the evidence. Damning, detailed, devastating. Vincent had been using Amber too, manipulating her father, planning to dump her once the investment was secured. 3 of us now, Caroline said. You, me, Diane Crawford. There are more, Amber said. His assistant mentioned others. Women from years ago. He called them practice runs. Then we find them all. Caroline reached across the table, took Amber's hand. He called us dead weight, all of us. Made us feel worthless. Made us think we were the problem. Made us think we deserved it. We were never the problem. No, we were not. The hashtag started that night. Hashtag deadweight speaks. 3 women, then 5, then 12, coming forward with their stories, their evidence, their truth. Vincent Ashford was not a millionaire. He was a serial predator who used women for capital, who destroyed them when they stopped being useful, who moved on to the next victim without looking back. And now, finally, the victims were looking at him. The story went viral, not through newspapers. Evelyn's connections could kill those stories. Through podcasts, social media, independent journalists, places where old money influence did not reach. Amber used her 340,000 followers to tell her story, to share the evidence, to name names. The same platform Vincent had used to humiliate Caroline, now used to destroy him. Diane gave interviews, calm, detailed, devastating. Her voice steady, her evidence documented, her truth undeniable. The other women came forward, one by one then all at once. A flood of stories. All the same, all different, all true. Vincent Ashford trended for 3 days straight. The court hearing was January 15th. Judge Patricia Winters presiding. A fair judge. No connections to either family. The courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows. Supporters filling every seat. Women Carolyn had never met who had driven hours to be there, who had survived their own Vincents, who needed to see justice done. Richard Sullivan presented the evidence. Financial fraud spanning years. Serial predation spanning nearly a decade. A pattern of behavior with at least 8 documented victims. Vincent's attorney objected. Repeatedly, desperately, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prenup was voided, fraud established, criminal referral made to the district attorney. Judge Winters looked at Vincent for a long moment, her face unreadable, her voice cold. Mr. Ashford, in 23 years on this bench, I have seen terrible behavior, cruelty, manipulation, fraud. Yours ranks among the worst. You have systematically targeted vulnerable women, exploited their trust, their love, their hope for a future. You have destroyed their finances, their relationships, their belief in themselves, and you have shown not a shred of remorse. Child support will be calculated based on your actual earning potential, not your fictional millionaire income. Your offshore accounts will be frozen pending investigation. You will have no contact with your daughter pending psychological evaluation. And Mr. Ashford, if I see any evidence at all, that you are continuing your pattern of behavior, you will be held in contempt, and I will recommend prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. The gavel came down. Vincent stood, pale, shaking, the facade completely gone. Just a small man, a broken man, a man who had been exposed. This is not fair, he said, his voice cracking. She destroyed me. They all destroyed me. No, Mr. Ashford, Judge Winters said. You destroyed yourself. These women simply told the truth about it. Outside the courthouse, Evelyn Ashford waited by a black car. Alone, her social circle had evaporated in the weeks since the hashtag went viral. Her connections suddenly unavailable. Her phone calls unreturned. She said nothing, just looked at Caroline, at the crowd of supporters, at the cameras. Her world was crumbling too. Nicholas had not destroyed her. He had simply stopped protecting her, let the truth speak for itself. And the truth was devastating. Caroline walked past her, did not acknowledge her, did not need to. Some victories do not require words. Valentine's Day. Caroline went into labor. The irony was not lost on her. Destroyed on the day of love. Delivered on the day of love. Full circle. Grace was there, holding her hand through every contraction, counting breaths, telling terrible jokes. Being exactly who she had always been, Margaret was there, strong, present, the way she had always been, the way she always would be. Nicholas waited outside, still earning his place, still learning how to be present, still showing up even when he did not know what to do. Richard Hartwell brought paperwork between contractions. Vincent had signed away his parental rights, voluntarily. In exchange for reduced criminal charges, he chose his freedom over his daughter. One last time showing exactly who he was. The labor was long, hard, 18 hours of pain that made everything else she had survived seem small. But Caroline had survived worse. At 11:47 p.m., February 14th, Hope Margaret Whitmore entered the world. 8 pounds 3 ounces, dark hair, blue eyes, perfect fingers, perfect toes, perfect. Caroline held her daughter, this tiny person she had fought for, bled for, nearly lost everything for. Hi, baby. She whispered through tears of joy and exhaustion. I am your mom, and I promise I will tell you the truth, always, about everything, about who your father was, about who your grandfather is, about how hard I fought to give you this life. You will never wonder if you were enough, because you are everything. Nicholas came in an hour later, hesitant, uncertain, a billionaire who had commanded boardrooms, terrified of a 7-pound baby. Would it be okay if I come meet your granddaughter? He approached slowly, carefully, like she might shatter, like he might break something precious. She is so small. She is perfect. She looks like you did. When you were born, your mother sent me pictures. Years ago. I kept them. All these years. Caroline placed Hope in his arms, showed him how to support her head, how to hold her close. He looked at his granddaughter, and he cried, not hiding it, not ashamed. I do not deserve this. Maybe not, but she deserves a grandfather. And you are here, that matters. They sat in silence. Grandfather, daughter, granddaughter, 3 generations. Broken, healing, beginning again, 6 months later, Central Park. August, Carolyn pushed Hope's stroller through the summer afternoon, dappled sunlight through the trees, the smell of grass and hot dogs and life. Nicholas walked beside her, learning to be present, showing up. Every day. Grace was there too. Her custody case had settled. Joint custody, fair terms. Turns out helping a friend through crisis had shown the court exactly the kind of mother she was. Margaret's catering business was thriving. The publicity had helped. The underdog story. The small business beating old money. People loved it. Contracts were flooding in. Amber had rebuilt her platform. Authentic storytelling now. Supporting survivors of manipulation. Using her influence for something real. Something that mattered. Diane had written a memoir, a bestseller, helping other victims find their voice, find their power, find their way back to themselves. And Vincent? Carolyn saw him across the park, sitting on a bench alone, thin, diminished, the facade completely gone, just a man who had lost everything, who had destroyed himself. He saw them too, saw his daughter for the first time, started to stand, wanted to approach. Carolyn kept walking, did not look back, did not need to. He had made his choice. She had made hers. Nicholas touched her shoulder. Are you okay? I am better than okay. She looked at Hope, 6 months old now, babbling, grabbing at everything, discovering the world with wonder and joy. I used to think this story was about what Vincent did to me, about betrayal, about losing everything. What is it about now, Bao? Building something new, from the ashes of what tried to burn me down. They walked on, past the bench where Vincent sat, past the life she almost had, toward the life she had built. Caroline looked at her father. This man she was still learning to trust, still learning to love. You asked me once if I would tell Hope about you, about who you really were. Yes, I will tell her everything. The truth, all of it. The father you were, the man you are becoming, the grandfather who shows up, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Nicholas's eyes filled with tears. That is more than I deserve. Maybe, but it is what she deserves. The truth. Always. They walked on together, through the park, through the summer afternoon, through the beginning of something new. Vincent Ashford had called her dead weight. He was not wrong. She had been weighing him down, weighing down his lies, his fraud, his carefully constructed empire of deception. But here is what he never understood about weight. It can sink you, or it can ground you. Caroline chose to be grounded. In truth, in family, in the daughter who would never wonder if she was enough, because she was everything. And that was the real victory. Not the court case, not the public vindication, not watching his empire crumble. The real victory was this moment, this walk, this family. The real victory was hope. Caroline leaned down, kissed her daughter's forehead. Happy Valentine's Day, baby. 8 months late, but worth the wait. Hope laughed. That baby laugh that sounds like pure joy, like everything good in the world, like hope itself. And Caroline, finally, completely, undeniably, was home.